to discuss is Cosmology 160. Now, this is the box that deals with all aspects of the shape, size, origin and future of the universe as a whole, the cosmos. Cosmos was a term invented by the Greeks to mean the system of the universe, the heavens. In ancient times, our early ancestors believed that the earth was flat, that the heavens, the stars, the sun, the moon, they all revolved around this planet, which was stationary in the middle. And they had quite a small view of the cosmos. Biblical literalism believes the world all began here at 4000 BC. And, up until the Renaissance, a lot of people in Europe still believe that. And in the biblical, tradition. But since the discovery of the telescope, and since Galileo was able to map the heavens a bit, and Copernicus was able to work out the mathematics of the revolution of the heavens, he realized the sun is at the center of our solar system, and our planet revolves around the sun. And this was an absolute game changer. And as telescopes became more sophisticated, we could extend the vision of cosmology, which then had implications for science and for philosophy. Kant it was, who was interested in astronomy, he said he thought the solar system had condensed out of a gas and dust cloud, and all the planets had formed from that. Well, that seems to be accepted by science now, so it was Kant's idea. And I was good friends with a chap called Dr. Carl Shapley, whose father, Harlow Shapley. Dr. Harlow Shapley was an astronomer at Harvard, friend of Roosevelt, and he mapped out the fact that the heavens are divided into different galaxies. Up until the 1920s, they didn't even know that. They thought that there were stars everywhere and it was always the same. Harlow Shapley and other colleagues with sophisticated telescopes worked out that stars come in these giant clusters called galaxies, and we're in one. We call it the Milky Way. And they worked out, where it is. We see it on end as a sort of cloud because we're looking at it askance. And Harlow and his colleagues mapped out the other galaxies, which are always being extended with the new James Webb Telescope. It's vast. It's amazing. These incredible photo images that are now coming back, showing how vast the galaxies are. And the galaxies themselves are grouped in what are called galactic clusters, which is now known. It wasn't known, even Harlow didn't know all that stuff. And they're separated by vast distances of space, which are not, however, empty. They're full of, you tell me, dark matter, dark energy, water vapour. There's vast amounts of water vapour in the universe that they've only recently discovered. And obviously light rays and cosmic rays. So, yeah, the field of cosmology is absolutely fascinating. And now they're exploring planets that are circulating stars and using telescopes to try and detect life in other planetary systems. And they're seeing, I think the statistics, Voltaire said there's got to be life on other worlds. He didn't know all the details, but he was a clever enough man to realise that the universe is pretty vast, and why should we just be special on our planet? So there've got to be intelligent beings, I believe, and with Voltaire on this, and with Carl Sagan and others. And, the paradox is, why aren't we in contact with them? Well, some people say we are. That there are people who can achieve telepathic contact with extraterrestrials and have done. I'm told by Jim Garrison and other colleagues that study this stuff that telepathy is the means of communication for extraterrestrials. I'm not sure how one verifies that. We might have to tweak scientific method because, of course, anybody can channel anything and say it's true. But how can we independently verify that? Can we get 3 telepathic people all communicating with the same star system and seeing if they come up with the same stuff? That would be a scientific way of doing it. I'd be for encouraging this. And also in America, they're now trying to get the US government to release all the secret files on UFO stuff. Maybe there's something interesting in there. One question that arises, and it came up in a seminar of the Scientific and Medical Network recently with Jim Garrison, is what if different extraterrestrial factions have their own politics going on? What if Galaxy X has sent extraterrestrials to planet Earth with one set of agendas? Sorry, I'm going to have a cough here. Can I have some water?
Yes.
And another planet system is sending other ones, and they're making alliances with different powers on Earth. Let's say some of them are making deals with America, some with Russia, some with France, some with Britain. And they're going to start sort of like dividing us humans into warring parties and encourage a World War III so they can then step in and take over. It's like a colonization going on. There are people that say that's what's going on, and that's why we humans can't get peace, because we're being interfered with by great powers. We're like native Indian tribes at the time of the French and English colonization. I hope that's not true. I think if it's... Well, I'm with the Earthlings, let's put it like that. I want the Earthlings to have a peaceful global civilization, not interfered with by extraterrestrials who have got violent or negative tricks up their sleeve. I also have a faith that if a civilization from another planet world is so intelligent that it's cracked the speed of light and can travel huge distances across space, I think it must be morally advanced. I don't believe such intelligence would be malevolent. I think all these Star Trek movies of Klingons and nasty aliens, I like to think is fake, and it's just human fear, imagination. Like children in the nursery seeing giants under the bed out to get them. I'd like to think that the genuine extraterrestrials, voyagers, are benevolent and mean well for humanity. And those are the ones worth contacting, I would say. But anyway, I suspend judgment on all of this. None of it may be true. I mean, let's see. I'm a scientific-minded guy that wants evidence. And I do know one little story. I met somebody once who lived on a houseboat in the Thames who used to do channeling of extraterrestrials, a middle-aged woman, very intelligent lady, convinced that she was in contact with them. And she was doing trainings for the British Cabinet in Downing Street as well, in another part of her life. So, what does the British government know about this stuff? There's a guy called Tim Good, who wrote a book called Above Top Secret. He worked for the MOD, and the MOD in Whitehall, there's a department that has to investigate all UFO sightings because they might be a security risk. And so they used to send out Tim Good to go and find out what was going on, interview survivors or people who witnessed stuff. And he said, and there are thousands of those sightings in the archives, he said that during the 5 years he worked for the MOD, he reckoned about 90% of these sightings could be explained away. Weather balloons, accident, weather, something else. But he said there was about 10% that was seriously inexplicable, anomalous, and he had no explanation for them. Anyway, he's still around, and his book is well worth reading if you're into this stuff. So that's cosmology. That box is really interesting, 160. It looks at the shape, structure, size, origin of the universe, but also these kind of bigger questions about life, exobiology. Is there life in other parts of the universe? Is it intelligence? And please help planet Earth get intelligent. I think they could at least send a team of educators down here, and help educate us. I've always said I'm willing to participate in the first intergalactic philosophy seminar. I'd love to invite anyone that wants to join in with that. As a serious project, if somebody wants to come out the woodwork and say, well, actually, yes, I'm an educator from Planet Zog, then come forward and let's hear from you. And, if you're not faking it, I'd love to hear from anyone with any wisdom from whatever part of the universe they're from. Okay, that's cosmology. It's a fun one. Right, shall we move on and do our gods? Talking of extraordinary extraterrestrial beings who have vast wisdom to share. There are people that say some of these gods, that's where they originate. So let's choose one and we'll have a look at what they have to say.
Ooh. We couldn't choose. Two came out.
Let's have this one. We haven't had him for a while.
Okay.
We've had Saturn a bit. Liber. Ah, that's fun. So these are great, these two. We've got, we'll do Liber first, because that was pulled first. This is the ace of water. We've been talking a lot about water this week, and earlier we were discussing Thales and the arche being water, which was his theory, and how water's like the moon and the feminine principle. And here we've got the ace of water showing up. Can I give you those for a second? Now, yes, so Liber comes from the same root as liberation, and liberal means freedom. He was a deity of ancient Rome, who stood for the common people, the plebeians, the ordinary people of Roman society. They weren't all rich aristocrats running armies and doing slavery. These were the normal people. Liber meant the free one. It's also called Liber Pater, the free father. And he was the patron deity of the Roman plebeians, working classes, just ordinary people who, and they loved him because he was concerned for the poor, not just for the rich. He was the god of everybody. And the Liberalia was a big public festival in Rome on March the 17th, in which a portable shrine was carried through the Roman neighbourhoods, and Liber's priestesses offered honey cakes, and young men came out with their togas. They were initiated into manhood on the Liberalia, and it was an important thing. The Aventine Hill in Rome was where Liber's temple was, along with the other gods that Bacchus being perhaps the most important, were part of this the plebeian worldview. So I think it's interesting that in Britain, normal people who have suffered under the Tory government of aristocrats and extremely wealthy people, and did Brexit for it, have now voted them out in the Labour victories. The Labour Party is like the party of Liber, if you want, which wants social justice for all, working people and the aristocracy, so that everybody gets their fair go at life. It's wrong that people should be born into poor households with no chance of proper education, no likelihood of jobs, and God knows what. So this tradition of what's called liberalism in the politics of the 18th century became big in France and in England. The idea that everybody should get a chance at success in life, regardless of your wealth. And it led to the rise of modern liberalism, which gave birth to the both gradualistic democratic revolutions, but also the French Revolution. And during the French Revolution, there was a symbol associated with Liber, consisting of a wooden pole surmounted by a liberty cap which was a cap that was worn during the French Revolutionary times, to symbolise you were on the side of the common people, on the side of ordinary people, and on liberty. And these ideas then moved from France to Italy, which had its own liberation movement and led to the unification of Italy. It led to similar ideas in Holland, which had its own republic for a while, and in Latin America with Simon Bolivar and people. They took this idea forward, and in Britain, it's where the Liberal Party came from, which I joined back in the 80s. I still belong to the Liberal Democrats. We're the party that wants liberty for everyone, not just for the elites. And we work alongside the Labour Party in achieving that. So Lieber's an important deity, and interestingly, he is celebrated through wine. Wine is his favourite tipple, and so he's shown here under a vine, holding a jug of wine. He's a great lover of life. He's not afraid of eros, the force of eros. He believes that we people are supposed to love each other. And so to be liberal in that matter is another thing that Lieber does. He doesn't believe in punishing people who fall in love, even like across religious or race or cultural boundaries. So he believes in liberty. And, the reason why I support Ukraine in this horrible war with Russia is because they are standing for liberty too. They wanted to be part of the European Union. They didn't want to be controlled by a Russian plutocracy, which Putin has gathered around himself. And some friends of mine tell me, no, you're wrong. Putin is very clever. Yes, he helped do Brexit. Yes, he put Trump in the White House, but that shows how clever he is. Well, I say that doesn't show that he's good. He's misusing his cleverness, which Tucker Carlson's interview shows, to do wrong. And that is a mark of evil. Evil is not stupid. It's very clever. But if it doesn't have Lieber at its heart, if it's not using that intelligence to liberate people, truly, then it's wrong and it's evil. And that is a mark of what in Christianity we call the Antichrist, which stands for the energies opposed to Christ's liberational work. I think Christ was a devotee of Lieber. That's why he was always, opening the wine. And that's why he served it up at the Last Supper. And in the Mass, the celebration, the body of God is in the wine. He's very similar to Dionysus. Lieber is like the Roman equivalent to Dionysus. And if you read the book by Brian Muraresku, The Key to Immortality, he speculates that the very earliest Christians used psychedelic spiced wine. So that the Mass became like a whole trip. It wasn't just any old wine. It was psychedelic, magical wine that brought you a vision, a glimpse of the kingdom of God. And Brian, I think, has got some very good evidence. And he reckons that was a continuation of the mysteries of Eleusis, which they used a kikeon, that was psychedelic, to bring visions to the initiates. It's possible, when I took Mass in St. Peter's in Rome, it's a pretty cosmic experience, actually. I don't think it was psychedelic, though. It was just a natural high. So Lieber stands for liberty against all tyrants. And I think it stands for the people of Ukraine. It stands for the people of Britain who are voting the Tories out. It stands for the Democrats in America that are trying to stop Trump coming back in. Who stands for the opposite? Who stands for tyrannical oppression of the poor? I think the poor, we can be poor in monetary terms, but also poor in informational terms. There's a new poverty today, which is lack of access to information. And a lot of people that sort of vote for Trump and cheer the Tories, they're poor intellectually and informationally. They don't have the tools and equipment to cope with the complexity of today's world. And Lieber stands against all that. He wants human beings to be wise and to use that wisdom because it's our birthright. This is why I don't agree with huge fees for universities. I think universities should be free. And of course, Lieber means freedom. in English. I think universities should be free to anyone that's got the aptitude and the skills, like a big bursary type thing. When I studied at the University of London, we had grants in those days. I'd like to bring that system back so that so that everyone can be educated up to the same level as an Eton graduate or an Oxford graduate. I think it's our birthright to be intelligent. And this goes back to my point about universal and complete enlightenment. Liebe stands for the enlightenment of everyone, not just the rich. And why I'm against Brexit is it's an elitist project by some very clever people like Boris Johnson and other Eton cronies who dreamed up a scheme to get their elitist, plutocratic colleagues able to fiddle their money so that it's all offshore and can't be taxed and can't, nobody can know about it. Well, I think that's unbelievably wrong. And so if we're going to do universal enlightenment, we have to rethink all that with Liebe's help. So that, I think, is why Liebe's a good card. And the Ace of Water, because he stands for that liberation of the feminine quality, of wisdom and love, which is, the work to be done. Then we have another god who's turned up, and this god is unusual, because this god is God. God has his own card in the Tarot of the Gods, and he's the 9th of the major arcana. Because, if you're going to have a Tarot of the Gods, I think God ought to have his own card. And he's the equivalent of the Hermit in the traditional tarot. In the traditional tarot, the Hermit holds a lamp up, like that. That's the traditional Hermit picture. And it seems to me God is the Hermit, because he's sort of in hiding. I don't know anyone out there has seen God recently, but it's difficult to spot and be sure, yeah, that's definitely God. Some people say he's even invisible. You can't actually see him. He dwells inside and has to be worshipped in spirit and truth, as Jesus said. He stands for the hermit and the faculties of meditation, solitude, and consciousness elevation. The word God is important. It's a Tarot of the Gods. Well, what does the word God mean? It comes from an old Anglo-Saxon root, which is related to the word to bring together, to gather. Gathering and bringing things together is what causes goodness. It's from the same etymological root as gut, good. And in Old Anglo-Saxon, the word good was the pronunciation for the word God. And the word God was the pronunciation for the word good. So I've gone into this in great detail with old etymological dictionaries, and so I can say absolutely that the word God and the word good come from the same etymological root in English. When our ancestors were thinking and shuffling runes about and trying to work out what everything's all about, they realised there's this thing which brings everyone together, and that is the good. Plato uses exactly the same concept in his great dialogues. He says in the Symposium, if you follow the path of love, you eventually reach the beautiful and you find the good, which is the source of everything. And so our word in English, God, is the name we use for the source of that goodness, which brings everything together. So I like that. When people used to say to me when I was a religious studies teacher in schools, and 15-year-old boys would say, I want to be doing football, I hate all this, I don't believe in God. I'd have to say, well, don't you believe in goodness? Do you want to win the game? Do you get a good feeling when you score a goal? Etc., etc. So we all actually believe in goodness, even if we don't believe in godness. But it's an extension of the same thing, because the argument is that because we experience goodness as human beings, there must be some source of that goodness that has created a world where we can feel good. Well, that's what we call God. So my question here, philosophically, to the Philosophy Club is, how can we actualise that more? How can people get back in touch with that primal goodness that we all ought to have? Aren't Palestinians entitled to feel good? Aren't Israelis entitled? Aren't Ukrainians entitled to feel good? Aren't the poor entitled to feel good? And to feel that goodness or godness? Surely all of us are entitled to that, regardless of our colour, race, class, wealth, bank balance. I mean, surely that's what God actually wants. And surely that's the point of all the teachings that we've got on the pyramid table. Isn't that the point of what Christ was trying to teach? That God is within us all, and therefore we should love our neighbour and as ourselves. Regardless of whether you're a Samaritan or a Roman or a Jew or whatever, tribe of Judah. We're all entitled to that sense of goodness. So I think this is a good card to God. There I go again, a good card, right? Because it's pointing to our need to bring that goodness energy to bear. And that's what I was meaning in my paper to the International Conference on Peace and Nonviolent Action, that we're not going to get peace until we get universal, complete, general enlightenment. And that is when we all feel that goodness together. You know, I mean, that's what friendship is, what love is. It's when good people come together and share that. That's what we need to be doing as a planet, it seems to me, at this time. That's why these are tools. The Tarot of the Gods is a tool for bringing people together that thought they were enemies because they follow this god or that god. No, we're all together in this, and therefore we should work together. Okay, that's all I want to say. I think that's enough on that. That's a big, huge topic, isn't it? And I think if you're interested in the details, please get the book, read it, study it in more detail. And now we'll do one last thing. Yes, any questions or comments?
Well, the runes are in the other room. Do you want me to get the runes?
I thought we might, we can either do the runes or we can do another quick look at the calendar of today.
I may have one question.
Okay. Yeah, go for it.
Because when you make the parallel between God and good, it seems that where is the light? And the light is showing things, and nowadays it looks like the light is showing bad stuff on Earth, but it depends. Most of the case, it could show the good things on Earth. So many good things we do not focus in.
Yeah.
I think most of us are partly enlightened. When you see a mother with children or good relationships and between people, I believe that goodness is not enough focused on by media especially, and therefore in our minds.
That's a really good point, thank you. And it's true, I have friends that have been trying to run a positive newspaper in England for years. That's why I launched the Love Journal, to try and focus on that. It's the only academic journal in the world on the nature of love, which is silly, So yes, the media does tend to focus on the dark. Wars, conflict, violence. What this politician says about that one negatively, it's all about, as you say, negative stuff. I think those of us who follow the true God of goodness and want to bring people together, we can take courage from the fact that the air, the emptiness in which we all move, is silently holding all this. Our strength is, as St. Paul said, in our weakness. We don't have, goodness doesn't need like PR. You know, it's evil people that need self-promotion and public relations and lawyers and, you know, whereas goodness is the very air we breathe. And it's free and it's open to us all. It's open to the poor and the rich alike. And I think that's why we win in the end. Because the goodness is truly universal. It's in us all, as you say. Everybody is innately good, I believe. Mencius, the great Chinese philosopher, said the same through the Confucian teachings, that there is an innate kindness in human beings. We just have to, in a sense, we have to unthink all the horrors that the media show us all the time. It's like brainwashing us into being terrified of stuff. And terrorism is oh God, you know, we're all terrified and need to pay more money to the police and stuff. That's why I've countered that with the concept of joyism. I've coined the word joyism, which is good people doing good things in a joyful way. I mean, the Philosophy Club is a joyous act. We're sharing some of the deepest wisdom for free, you know, for everybody. That to me is what we should be doing here. And I believe it will bear fruit in the end, as people finally awake from the dream of horror that we've been shown and come back to remember the primal love which is with us all. Yes. But anyway, great question, thank you. Let's do a brief round of the universal calendar today, and then we'll do the runes privately, because they're more sort of they're important, but I'd rather use the runes for our private use, and focus on this universal calendar of saints and sages, which I did mention last week. I'm not going to do every single one, it's not possible, but today is the what is it, 18th of February. Okay. Let's have a look here, what's happening here. So this, as I explained last week, if you heard, this is the only calendar of universal saints and sages ever produced in the history of this planet, I believe. And the idea was to awaken this universality within all the faith traditions, which is the point of the periodic table and everything. I thought we need a calendar, so each day of the year we have a group of these illuminated souls to look at and remember their work, and just, as it were, intellectually bring them into an inner gathering of connectedness. So, on the 18th of February, who have we got? For women, we have a French artist, Rosa Bonheur, 1872 to 1899. Sorry, 1822 to 1899. I don't know much about her. I don't have the details. A French painter, but no doubt did some good stuff. We have an Egyptologist for esoteric thinkers, Schwaller de Lubitz, born 1887, a Hermeticist, so he was interested in ancient Egyptian esoteric teachings. I have some of his books. We have Kumarapala, a Jain saint, and we just had this big Jain conference. The word Jain means victorious, someone who has conquered themselves. We have Simplicius, one of the last philosophers of the Platonic Academy when it was shut down. He went with Damascius, who was the last leader of the Academy, to Persia, because the Christian emperor had declared the Academy of Plato should be closed, because foolishly the Christians of the Orthodox ruling party at the time thought that freedom of thought and Christianity were incompatible.